Hola, friends. I want you to consider the Welwitschia. Oh, no, not the beverage. This delicious Welwitschia that I'm currently drinking. It's wonderful tonic water. I guess I should hasten to say that this is not an advertisement for Welwitschia, at least not an intentional one. I do like this beverage quite a bit. I think I'm attracted to it primarily because it's made locally here in Angola. It has a very bitter taste to it, which I know is not to everyone's liking. But, it seems like every family has at least one family member who likes black licorice, while other people in the family don't. And so it is that family member's duty, nay responsibility, to consume black licorice on behalf of the rest of the family. I'm one of those people. I'm a black licorice person, so I'm also down with this Welwitschia, this delicious tonic water. This particular one, it is special. It has a bit of limão in it, so that is lemon. It tastes very good, at least I think so. But why is this beverage called Welwitschia? Where does that unusual name come from? And why is an Angolan drink using that name? Well, I'd like to take a moment to chat with you about the answer to that question. In 1859, Friedrich Welwitsch was in Angola when he discovered this enormous plant, the Welwitschia, and it is simply one of those great historical coincidences that the man who found the Welwitschia happened to be named Welwitsch. I mean, that's how I explain the story in any event. And the interesting thing about the Welwitsch, beyond its rather large size, it is, for something that is not a tree, it's pretty large, né? Well, part of what makes it so fascinating is how rare it is. It is found in the Namib Desert, so by that name you may have guessed that the Namib Desert is found in Namibia. It's also found here in Angola in a province called Namib. So those are the only places on Earth that have produced the perfect climate for this plant. And then the really fascinating thing about it, Welwitschas are old. They live a really long time. It is believed that a Welwitschia can live for 1,000 or more years. So that's pretty incredible. Some people have called them living fossils because of that. Now, I didn't see any Welwitschas in my first trip to Angola because I was in the province of Huila the entire time. But the second time that I came, back in 2013, I thought might possibly be the last time I ever went to Africa. It was an attempt to see all the things in Africa that I had not seen and really wanted to see. And well, my uncle decided it was really important that I see a Welwitschia. So he drove me out to the ocean one day, which from Huila you pretty much have to go to Namib province. And as we're driving through some desert, he was scanning the side of the road, and finally he saw a Welwitschia, and I think the tires almost screeched as he came to a halt, took me off road, and there, sure enough, a Welwitschia, in fact 2 Welwitschias growing pretty close together. And boy, that was really something. I'm not normally one for plants, but the fact that it was so old, that it had lived for so long, was fascinating to me. If you know a bit about my background, you know that I worked in the comic book industry, so I have a lot of interest in not just comic book fiction, but also pulp fiction. And I can well understand how enormous and rare plants like the Welwitschia helped inspire all those pulp tropes about giant killer man-eating plants in fiction. And certainly there were a lot of stories like that in pulp fiction of the late 19th century, early 20th century, and it still shows up here and there from time to time. And they don't just place them in Africa in those stories. There are also, as you might expect, lots of stories of man-eating plants in South America, and there are some in Australia. And frankly, the Australian ones are the ones that are most credible, because if any place on Earth could support a plant life that devours human beings, I would assume it would be found in Australia. So, a few years ago, the Welwitschia even turned up inside a DC comic book. It was called Poison Ivy, Cycle of Life and Death. And in this, Poison Ivy, the famous Batman villain, who considers herself a plant rights activist, is working for the Gotham Botanical Gardens. She goes to Angola, finds a Welwitschia, and then takes out a shovel, digs it up, and brings it back to Gotham to put it in the Botanical Gardens. And, well, you know, as I was saying, the Welwitschia kind of requires a particular environment in order to thrive. You know, they didn't survive for 1,000 years or more because they were just any old place. It was because of the unique conditions in that desert. I would think, okay, could you just take one, uproot it, bring it to the United States and stick it in a greenhouse and it would be okay? At the very least, wouldn't it need like its own unique environmental system just to keep it happy? Like, I don't think you could put it in with all the other plants, at least not your typical botanical plants. As well, I mean, there's a question of just how seriously do you take Poison Ivy as a character? The answer to that question should be, don't take her seriously at all. She's a fictional character, okay? And she's a supervillain. She's the bad guy. But some people seem to think that this character who goes on and on about plants as though they are like living people might actually have a valid point, which, no, she might accidentally have a point here and there. She is, at the end of the day, criminally psychotic as well. I don't think she actually is good to plants, because, well, where she goes, trouble follows, and her stories tend to end with her greenhouse catching fire and all of her rare plants dying. So, like, she's pretty much the last person on Earth you want to give your rare plant to, because it is almost certainly going to be engulfed in flames. And even then, even if it just stayed at the Gotham Botanical Gardens, we're talking Gotham City. The Welwitschia is a rare, endangered plant. All life in Gotham City is rare and endangered, except for billionaire playboys, of which they have a surplus. I'm suggesting that this fictional character who offers screeds on how evil humans are towards plants doesn't have to be taken seriously, all right? I apologize for blowing your mind there, but, well, it had to be done. This has been Michael Hoskin, rambling to you about Welwitchias while drinking a Welwitschia here in Angola. I hope you enjoyed this meandering discussion. Ciao.